Picture this. It's the end of the day. You are collapsing onto your couch, completely drained to the bone.
Oh, yeah. Just totally exhausted.
Right. From being relentlessly, intensely busy since the absolute second your alarm went off, you haven't stopped moving.
Not even for a minute.
Exactly. And yet, as you sit there, staring at the ceiling, you have this sinking, incredibly uncomfortable realization
That you didn't actually do anything.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing important actually got done today.
It is a violently universal experience, honestly. You feel like you've been sprinting on a treadmill at, maximum incline for 10 hours.
Ugh, the worst feeling.
Right. And then you step off and realize you are standing in the exact same room, looking at the exact same wall. You've expended all this energy, but you haven't actually traveled anywhere.
Exactly. And that frustration, that specific gap between how hard we work and how little we feel we've actually achieved, that's exactly what we are pulling apart in today's deep dive.
It's such a crucial topic.
It really is. We're looking at the core architecture of time management, habit building, and really just getting our brains back. And this is all grounded in a really sharp narrative source we have today called The Art of Doing What Matters Most.
Yeah, it's a great read. Really insightful.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the modern worker's brain, we have to look at how we process information. We operate remarkably like a web browser that has 100 tabs open at the same time.
Oh, man. I know that feeling.
Right. You know that sound your computer makes? The battery is draining, the internal cooling fan is spinning like a jet engine, the RAM is completely maxed out.
Yep, it's about to take off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you look at the actual screen, the page you need isn't loading.
That analogy hits almost too close to home.
I thought it might.
Well, the reason it rings so true is that it perfectly illustrates a neurological trap we all fall into. We basically confuse activity with accomplishment.
Because we're busy.
Exactly. Because the internal fan is spinning, because our heart rate is up, we're stressed out, and we are rapidly clicking between Slack and email and a spreadsheet. Our brain genuinely believes we are doing something highly valuable.
Wow. So the effort tricks us.
Right. We equate the friction of the effort with the value of the output.
Yes, the friction. If it feels hard, it must be productive, right?
That's the lie we tell ourselves, yeah.
But to figure out how to escape that trap, we need to look at a classic archetype from our source material. Let's talk about the guy who embodies this perfectly. We'll call him Noah.
Noah, yeah. The classic case study.
Right. He is our stand-in for the highly ambitious, completely overwhelmed modern professional.
And what's crucial to understand about this Noah archetype, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, is that his problem isn't laziness.
Not at all.
It's the exact opposite, actually. He wakes up every day with fantastic intentions. He wants to knock out a major project, learn a new skill, go to the gym, and, have an hour to actually read a book.
On paper, it is the perfect day.
Perfect day.
But the reality is a complete train wreck. And it always gets derailed by what is fundamentally the most dangerous phrase in the English language.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Just for a minute.
Yep, there it is.
Noah sits down to tackle that big, intimidating project. He feels a tiny spike of anxiety and he thinks, let me just check my messages just for a minute. Let me just clear my inbox so I can focus.
And then it's gone.
Right. Suddenly, 45 minutes have just evaporated into thin air.
What's fascinating here is the underlying neurology of that specific phrase.
Break that down for us.
Well, when you tell yourself just for a minute, you are actually trying to bypass your own cognitive defenses. You're trying to convince your prefrontal cortex that this isn't a distraction, it's just a tiny, harmless detour.
Just a quick pit stop.
Right. But here is the reality of the modern digital landscape. The notifications, the endless scroll, the infinite feeds, they operate on what psychologists call a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement.
Like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. You pull the lever, meaning you open the inbox or the app, and you don't know if you're going to get an urgent request, a funny meme, a piece of good news, or absolutely nothing at all.
The unpredictability.
Yes, that unpredictability spikes your dopamine. So when you open that door, just for a minute, you are fighting against literally billions of dollars of engineering designed specifically to hijack your attention.
That's terrifying when you put it like that.
It is. You don't decide how long you stay. The algorithm does.
And even if Noah manages to pull himself away from his phone, the environment itself is fighting him. I mean, he's trying to write a report, but an email pings.
So he answers it.
Right. Then a coworker sends a chat. He replies. He's constantly switching contexts. And by 5:00 p.m., he is that guy on the couch, exhausted, burnt out, asking himself, what did I actually do today?
Well, let's talk about why he's so exhausted, because it's not just the physical time he lost to the interruptions. It's a concept called attention residue.
Attention residue. Okay, explain that.
So when you switch from writing a complex report to reading a two-sentence email, your brain does not cleanly pivot.
It doesn't just let go of the report.
No, exactly. A significant portion of your cognitive processing power stays stuck on the original task. And then when you switch back to the report, a piece of your attention is now stuck on the email you just read.
So you're dragging it with you.
Right. Every time you switch tabs in your brain, you leave a residue of attention behind. If you do that 50 times a day, your brain's processing power is sliced so thin that deep, meaningful work becomes functionally impossible.
Wow.
You are exhausted because your brain is trying to run 50 incomplete programs in the background.
Okay, I hear that, and the science makes total sense, but I really have to push back here.
Sure, go ahead.
We're talking about this like Noah has a choice. Isn't this just the undeniable reality of modern professional life? We have to be responsive. I mean, if my boss emails me, I can't just ignore it because I'm avoiding attention residue. Clients expect immediate replies. How are you actually supposed to function? Let alone keep your job without multitasking and constantly monitoring your communications.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is the exact defense mechanism we all use to justify our chronic busyness.
I have no choice. My job demands it.
Exactly. But we have to untangle two very different concepts here. Being responsive versus being accessible.
Okay, what's the difference?
Being responsive means you are a reliable professional who gets back to people in a timely, predictable manner. Being accessible means anyone can insert themselves into your brain at any given second of the day.
Oh, that's a huge distinction.
It is. A lot of us think our bosses want us to be constantly accessible, when in reality they just want us to be reliably responsive. And to prove that this frantic, always-on multitasking isn't actually a requirement of the modern workplace, our source introduces the antithesis of Noah.
His colleague, Emma.
Yes, Emma.
Emma operates in the exact same environment as Noah. Same company, same boss, same hours. But she gets completely different results. Where Noah is scattered and frantic, Emma is remarkably calm.
It's night and day.
And the kicker, she finishes her highest priority work on time every single time and goes home completely unplugged.
She is living proof that the chaos is, to a large extent, a choice. It's a default setting we've accepted, not some law of physics.
So naturally, Noah observes her for a few days, realizes she's playing a completely different game, and finally just asks her what her secret is.
He has to know.
Right. And she drops this incredibly quiet yet profound truth bomb on him. She says, time management is not about doing more, it's about doing what matters most.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a massive paradigm shift. Most of us approach our day trying to figure out how to do everything faster.
Right, like how can I clear these 50 emails quicker?
Exactly. How can I speed run these tasks? But Emma's saying the game isn't about speed. Speed is irrelevant if you're running in the wrong direction.
Wow, so true.
The game is entirely about selection.
And she doesn't just leave him with a motivational quote. She actually gives him her framework, and it's built on a few very rigid rules.
Very practical stuff.
Yeah. First rule, she plans the next day, the night before, every single evening.
Which eliminates decision fatigue in the morning.
Right.
When you wake up, your willpower is at its highest.
Mm-hmm.
If you waste that premium cognitive energy just trying to figure out what you should be doing, you're draining the battery before you even start.
Exactly. But it's her second rule that really stopped me in my tracks. She tells him that when he plans his day, he is allowed to choose exactly 3 important tasks.
Just 3.
Not 10, just 3. And he has to focus on them one at a time.
The power of 3.
Oh, wait, let me pause here again. Only 3 tasks. I mean, if I look at my personal to-do list right now, I've got at least 15 or 20 things on there.
At least.
And they all feel urgent. Limiting a daily plan to just 3 tasks feels almost negligent. If I only do 3 things today, I'm dropping the ball on 12 others.
You're touching on the single hardest part of this entire philosophy. You are confronting opportunity cost.
Yeah, the FOMO of productivity.
Right. Yes, you have 15 things on your list. But let's be radically honest. Are all 15 equally important? Do they all move the needle in your life or your career equally?
Well, no, of course not.
Exactly. Emma's framework forces you to stare that reality in the face. When you restrict yourself to 3 tasks, you are forced to prioritize ruthlessly. You have to separate the signal from the noise.
But what about the other 12 tasks? Do they just pile up?
This brings us to the concept of the Eisenhower matrix, or even Warren Buffett's famous 5/25 rule. The idea is that the most dangerous items on your to-do list aren't the completely useless ones.
Because you just ignore those anyway.
Right, to ignore those. The most dangerous items are numbers 4 through 15.
The middle of the pack.
Exactly. The things that feel productive, the minor chores, the easy emails. They're just important enough to justify doing, but not important enough to actually change your life or your trajectory.
Oh, wow.
They are the comfortable busy work that masquerades as actual work.
Which leads right into Emma's final and arguably most difficult piece of advice. She tells Noah he has to learn to say no.
Ugh, the hardest word.
Especially for Noah, because he is a chronic people pleaser. He says yes to absolutely everything.
Can you take a look at this slide deck?
Yes. Can you jump on this quick brainstorm call? Yes. Can you handle this minor side project? Yes.
And this raises an important question. What is the true cost of saying yes? When Noah says yes to every minor request from a coworker, he isn't magically creating more time in the universe.
No, the day is still 24 hours.
Right. He is implicitly saying no to his own top 3 priorities. He's sacrificing his deep work on the altar of being perceived as helpful.
Okay, but let's talk mechanics for a second.
Hi.
How do you actually say no to your boss without getting fired?
Fair question.
I mean, it's easy to preach boundaries, but in a corporate hierarchy, a flat no doesn't usually fly.
That is a critical nuance. You don't just say, no, I'm protecting my peace.
Right, you can't say that to the VP of sales.
No, you'll be out the door. You use the yes-if framework. When your manager comes to you with an urgent new request, you pull up your list of 3 priorities and you say, yes, I can absolutely take on this new project. To make room for it, should I pause priority 1 or priority 2?
Oh, I love that. You're not refusing the work, you're making the trade-off visible to them.
Exactly. You are forcing them to participate in the opportunity cost. Most of the time, when a boss sees what has to be delayed to accommodate their random request, they suddenly realize their request wasn't actually that urgent.
That's brilliant. So understanding this philosophy intellectually is easy, but actually breaking the addiction to distraction,
Much harder.
actually stepping away from the chaos and rewriting your default behaviors, that is incredibly hard. So how does someone like Noah actually implement this without falling right back into old habits by 10:00 a.m. the next day?
The transition from theory to practice is always where the friction lives. And it starts with a very specific, seemingly small choice Noah makes that very evening.
Right. Noah decides to try something genuinely new. Usually, he'd be engaging in his evening doom scrolling, laying in bed, absorbing endless blue light, watching his anxiety spike.
We've all been there.
Oh, definitely. But this time, he forces himself to physically put the phone in another room. Instead, he grabs a book.
A physical book?
Yeah, and specifically, a book of short stories in a foreign language he's been wanting to learn. I think the source mentions he reads short stories in English for Beginners, the teach yourself version.
Right.
He reads just one short story. Then he closes the book, grabs a piece of paper, and writes down his 3 tasks for tomorrow. Nothing more.
He is immediately implementing the evening planning rule. But more importantly, he's replacing a draining habit with an enriching one. You can't just delete a bad habit like doom scrolling. You have to overwrite it with a new behavior.
The real test, though, happens the next morning. Noah sits down, looks at his list of 3 tasks, and commits to tackling the first one. No multitasking, no email, no phone.
And it's awful at first.
It really is. The reality is it doesn't feel good. It feels agonizing. His mind desperately wants to check his phone. The physical urge is just overwhelming.
Oh, of course it is. This is what we call limbic friction. The neural pathways built by years of chronic distraction don't just magically vanish because you wrote down 3 tasks on a piece of paper.
Right. The brain still wants the slot machine.
Exactly. His brain is screaming for that dopamine hit that comes from context switching. The crucial difference today isn't that the urge is gone. The difference is that he observes the urge and chooses to stay focused anyway.
And he pushes through it. When he takes his scheduled break, instead of jumping onto social media to reward himself, he reads another short story in that foreign language.
Yeah, the book Learn English Through Stories. 16 stories to improve your English grammar and English vocabulary.
What a title.
It is, yeah. But the concept is solid.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the metaphor playing out here in the source material. He's using language learning as the vehicle to rebuild his attention span. And the core lesson he takes away from the language practice is this: small actions Repeat it every day, create big results.
It is the perfect parallel.
Think about it. If you want to learn a new language, you cannot do it by cramming for 10 hours straight on one random Sunday every month.
No, you'll forget everything by Tuesday.
Exactly. The brain literally cannot encode information that way. It requires small, consistent, daily exposure. 15 minutes today, 15 minutes tomorrow. That's how fluency is built.
Consistency over intensity.
Right. And productivity, attention span, the ability to focus deeply, these aren't personality traits. They are muscles. The source even mentions he adds another habit later, listening to effortless English. Learn to speak English like a native while he goes for walks.
Reinforcing that daily drip of exposure.
Exactly. Small reps.
That is such an empowering way to frame it. You can't just magically decide to be perfectly productive for an entire week. If your focus muscle has completely atrophied from years of multitasking.
You just can't lift that weight yet.
Right. You have to undergo neuroplasticity. You have to physically rewire your brain to tolerate boredom and sustain attention.
Which means it's going to be uncomfortable.
Highly uncomfortable. But it completely changes the goal line. Time management, as Noah realizes through this process, is never about achieving a state of robotic perfection.
Thank goodness.
Right. It is strictly about building better habits. If you stumble on a Tuesday and spend an hour lost in your inbox, it's not a moral failing. You didn't ruin the system.
It's just a slip-up.
It's just a missed rep at the gym. You don't quit the gym because of one bad workout. You just get back to the small, consistent actions the next day.
So we've seen the mechanics of the struggle. We've seen how he used this daily language learning habit to literally rebuild his capacity for focus. But what is the actual payoff? What happens when these small, seemingly insignificant actions compound over time?
Well, the narrative jumps forward to give us exactly that data point.
Right. We skip ahead 2 weeks, just 14 days of strictly applying Emma's methods, picking 3 tasks, single tasking, keeping the phone away.
And the results for Noah are undeniable. He is finishing his core work significantly faster because he isn't losing hours to attention residue.
He's actually getting his brain back.
Yeah, and he feels a massive reduction in baseline stress. And the ultimate victory, for the first time in years, he finally has genuine, guilt-free free time.
I love that part. There is a moment described where he is just sitting quietly one evening. His phone isn't in his hand. He isn't agonizing over a to-do list. He just thinks about his day, and he's genuinely content.
It is the exact mirror opposite of the exhaustion and hollow frustration we saw him experiencing at the very beginning.
The next day, he goes back to Emma, and he repeats her own advice back to her, realizing he finally understands it in his bones. He says, "You're right. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters."
Such a powerful realization.
It really is. And that right there is the undeniable thesis we pull from all this. The foundational truth is that everyone, from the CEO to the intern, gets the exact same 24 hours in a day. We don't need more time.
Hoping for more time is a total fantasy.
Exactly. What we actually need is better focus, better boundaries, and better habits. The mandate is incredibly clear. Start small, plan the night before, ruthlessly choose what actually matters, and take action.
Which brings us to the ultimate diagnostic tool. To distill this entire deep dive into a single metric that you can use to evaluate yourself every single day, you just have to pause, look at whatever you are doing in that exact moment, and ask yourself, am I busy or am I productive?
Am I busy or am I productive? Are you actually moving the needle, or are you just making the fan on your internal web browser spin as loud as possible?
That's the question.
I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. And before you jump into your next task, I want to leave you with a thought experiment to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Look at your schedule for tomorrow. If you were suddenly forced by some extreme circumstance to limit your entire day tomorrow to just one single task that truly mattered, meaning you had to completely ignore every email, decline every call, and skip every minor chore, what would that one task be?
That's tough.
And more importantly, how much of your current daily busyness is just a highly convenient, socially acceptable excuse to avoid starting it?
That is the real challenge.
Until next time, stay focused on what matters most.
Imagine you're standing in an elevator. The doors slide shut, and suddenly you realize you are completely alone with the CEO of your company.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Right. Or maybe it's just someone you deeply admire in your industry. It's just the two of you for the next 30 seconds. And you have to wonder, why does a basic biological function, speaking, making simple mouth sounds, suddenly feel like trying to defuse a bomb blindfolded?
Well, it's because in that confined space, the stakes of the interaction just artificially skyrocket in your mind. You aren't just communicating anymore, you're suddenly performing.
Yeah, performing. That's a great way to put it.
And the moment conversation becomes a performance, the fear of critical failure just takes over completely.
And that fear of critical failure is the exact phenomenon we are tackling today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to unpack an incredibly revealing excerpt from a piece called The Art of Connecting Through Confident Conversation. And I should mention right up front, the protagonist in our source material is actually an English language learner.
Right, but the psychological blueprint we're going to pull from her story applies to literally everyone.
Exactly. Whether you are trying to master a second language or you just want to survive a high-stakes networking event or, I don't know, just figure out how to talk to strangers at a dinner party without spiraling into a panic. The mechanics of that conversational paralysis are universally identical.
They really are. The barriers to human connection, they do not care about your vocabulary level.
No, they don't.
The anxiety that freezes a language learner trying to, say, order a coffee is neurologically indistinguishable from the anxiety of a native speaker trying to pitch $1 million idea to a boardroom.
Wow, yeah.
It's the exact same underlying mechanism of self-sabotage.
So to really understand that mechanism, let's look at the protagonist of our source material. Her name is Maya. And by all accounts, Maya is thoughtful, she's highly intelligent, and genuinely kind.
She sounds like a great person to have around.
She really does. She has all the raw ingredients you would actively want in a friend or a colleague. But when faced with the prospect of actually initiating a conversation, especially with someone she doesn't know well, she just becomes completely terrified.
Which is such a tragedy, right? Because she has this profound capacity for connection, but the execution is entirely blocked by panic.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this because the source material gives us a really great window into her mind during these moments.
Yeah, it breaks it down so well.
It does. I look at Maya's situation like a smartphone or a computer that's trying to run way too many heavy, demanding background apps at the exact same time.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. She's just standing there. Someone casually says hello, and immediately her internal processor maxes out at 100% capacity.
All those apps just launching at once.
Exactly. She's simultaneously running the, what should I say next? App. Did I mispronounce that word? App. Am I making weird eye contact? App.
And the really massive battery draining, what if I sound completely uninteresting right now? App.
Yes. That one drains the whole battery.
Yeah.
The system simply crashes.
Because human working memory has a strict limit. If your mental RAM is entirely consumed by those background anxiety programs, you literally have zero processing power left to listen to the words the other person is actually saying.
You're just totally blank. And when her system crashes, Maya resorts to the classic overwhelmed response, which is the emergency exit.
Sleep mode.
Yeah, she gives one-word answers, she keeps her interactions painfully short, or, honestly, she actively reroutes her path through the office just to avoid human contact altogether.
Which I think a lot of people can relate to.
Absolutely. I really want you, the listener, to pause and think about that dynamic. Recall a specific moment, maybe even this past week, when you completely froze up in a conversation.
We've all been there.
We really have. And it wasn't because you didn't have anything valuable to say, but because you were so intensely busy monitoring your own performance that you forgot to actually be in the room.
And that phenomenon is precisely why the text introduces a foil to Maya, her colleague, Daniel.
Oh, Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel is the guy we all know and, frankly, are a little jealous of. He is effortlessly magnetic.
He's the one chatting in the elevator, joking with the barista.
Right. He builds rapport with clients in seconds. And he isn't doing it with these grand theatrical speeches. He just operates with a very simple, relaxed naturalism.
And Maya's just desperate to understand his source code. She wants to know how he does it.
Who wouldn't?
Right. So she finally works up the courage to pull him aside and asks how he manages to do this so easily without the suffocating panic. And Daniel gives her a piece of advice that serves as the absolute turning point of this deep dive.
It really is the core of it all.
He tells her, it's not about being perfect, it's about being present.
It sounds deceptively simple, right? Almost like a motivational poster you'd see in an office.
Yeah, like hang in there.
Exactly. But the psychological depth of that phrase completely upends Maya's worldview. What's fascinating here is the massive realization Maya has when she truly dissects Daniel's approach.
What does she realize?
She realizes that her crippling social anxiety, which she always viewed as a sign of her own inadequacy, actually stemmed from intensely focusing entirely on herself.
I really want to linger on that for a second because that is a massive reframe.
It is.
We typically associate self-focus with arrogance or narcissism. We think of the person who just talks over everyone else.
Right, the loud guy at the party.
Exactly. We don't usually associate self-focus with the quiet, anxious person hiding in the corner. But when you look at the mechanics of perfectionism in a conversation, it is incredibly self-centered.
It really is. Maya was obsessing over her words, her mistakes, her perceived flaws, and her fear of judgment.
She was treating the other person not as a human being to connect with, but as a mirror reflecting her own performance back at her. In a weird way, withholding your true presence because you're afraid of looking foolish is a form of selfishness.
That is a harsh but incredibly accurate assessment. When we are socially anxious, the entire direction of our mental energy is pointed inward. We are guarding our own ego.
So what is Daniel doing differently?
Daniel's secret, the reason people naturally gravitate toward him, is that he points his energy entirely outward.
Okay.
He asks simple questions, he actively listens to the answers without formulating his reply in his head, and he gives the person his undivided attention.
Because people don't actually want a perfect performance.
Exactly. He inherently understands that people do not crave a flawlessly constructed, grammatically perfect monologue. They crave the feeling of being seen and heard. They crave real connection.
As profound as that realization is, I have to step in and challenge the practicality of it just a bit.
Sure, go ahead.
It's one thing to have that brilliant light bulb moment in your living room, you know. You can realize, wow, my anxiety is actually just inward-focused perfectionism. I need to focus outward. But you can't just flip a switch in your brain and instantly become Daniel.
No, definitely not.
The physiological panic is still going to flood your system the exact next time those elevator doors close.
You're completely right. You can't flip a switch, but you can systematically rewire the circuit. And the source material is very grounded about this reality.
Thank goodness.
Maya doesn't wake up the next morning magically transformed into a charismatic extrovert just because she had an epiphany. Insight alone almost never changes behavior under pressure.
So what did she do?
To change her default response, she had to undergo a deliberate period of training.
She had to build a cognitive muscle. Because she is analytical and smart, Maya devises an action plan.
Yeah.
She recognizes that trying to implement this new outward focus in the middle of a crowded office is like trying to learn how to swim during a hurricane.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You just drown.
Right. She needs a controlled environment.
No.
So she replaces her nightly habit of, mindlessly doom scrolling on her phone with a highly specific solitary practice routine.
Which is a brilliant strategy, using solitary private practice to master a highly social skill. It functions exactly like a flight simulator for a pilot.
A flight simulator, yes.
You don't put a novice in the cockpit of a commercial jet with 300 passengers and say, just be present.
That'd be terrifying.
Right. You put them in a dark, quiet box where making a mistake has absolutely zero real-world consequences, so they can learn where all the switches are.
Exactly. So let's look at how she actually builds that simulator. The sequence of her practice is meticulously structured in the text. She starts with a specific book, Short Stories in English for Beginners, the Teach Yourself one.
A great starting point.
Yeah, the language is simple, the plots are straightforward. But her method is the key. She doesn't just read them silently in her head. She forces herself to read the stories out loud to an empty room.
The physical friction of speaking is a vastly underappreciated hurdle in conversational anxiety.
Physical friction.
Yeah. When you are terrified to speak, part of the panic is the actual physical act of moving your jaw, using your vocal cords, and pushing air out of your lungs to form sounds you aren't confident in.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
By reading aloud in isolation, Maya is training her body to produce the language fluidly, completely removing the social stakes from the physical equation.
Okay, so once her vocal cords and her breathing are comfortable, she graduates to the next level of the simulator. She picks up a different resource, learn English through stories, 16 stories to improve your English grammar and English vocabulary. But the exercise changes here.
How so?
She reads a story, closes the book, and then attempts to retell that entire story out loud in her own words.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific retelling exercise is where the most significant neurological heavy lifting occurs.
Because she's not just reading anymore.
Right. Reading out loud conquered the physical friction. Retelling the story tackles the cognitive overload we discussed earlier.
Right. Let's go back to that computer RAM analogy. Why does retelling a story upgrade her processing power?
Well, think about the dual demands of a spontaneous conversation. You have to invent the content, the what you are going to say, while simultaneously managing the mechanics, the how you are going to say it.
And that's too much for the system.
Exactly. That dual processing is what crashes the system for an anxious person. When Maya retells a story she just read, the what is already decided. The plot, the characters, the outcome are fixed.
Oh, I see. She doesn't have to invent anything.
Right. This allows her brain to focus 100% of its processing power on the how, structuring the sentences, finding the right vocabulary, and organizing her thoughts logically.
She is essentially building mental scaffolding. By repeatedly practicing the pathway of translating an abstract thought into a spoken sentence in private, she is making that neural pathway hyper-efficient. She is automating the basic mechanics of expression.
Precisely. The text notes that initially this retelling is incredibly frustrating for her. She stumbles, she loses her train of thought, she gets mad at herself.
It's a workout.
It is, but through repetition, the pathway smooths out. She is lowering the baseline cognitive load required just to speak, which means when she eventually gets into a real conversation, she will actually have spare mental RAM available to focus on the other person.
Which brings a new problem into focus. She's getting faster at processing, but she's still a perfectionist.
Ah, yes, the perfectionism.
That's why the third resource she introduces into her private practice is so critical. It's an audio program called Effortless English. Learn to speak English like a native. The core philosophy she absorbs from this program isn't about memorizing complex grammar rules. It's a mandate to completely abandon the need for perfection.
A total mindset shift.
Completely. The goal shifts from flawless delivery to relaxed communication.
It acts as the philosophical glue for her mechanical practice. It reminds her that the objective of all this solitary repetition isn't to become a robotic, perfect speaker.
Right, because nobody wants to talk to a robot.
Exactly. The objective is to become comfortable enough with the language that she can let go of the steering wheel and actually look at the scenery. Or, in this case, look at the person she is talking to.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the solitary practice, the flight simulator, is ultimately a safe space. You can read stories out loud to your bedroom wall for a decade. You can retell plots to your cat until you are blue in the face.
Your cat won't judge you.
Exactly. But a conversation inherently requires another human being. Eventually, Maya has to take this newly optimized cognitive RAM and this new mindset out of the laboratory and into the wild.
The transition from the safety of theory to the unpredictable reality of human interaction. This is where most people quit.
And I love how the source material portrays this transition because it refuses to romanticize the process. Maya doesn't confidently stride into the office break room and suddenly command the room with a brilliant, witty anecdote.
Not at all.
Her grand debut into the real world is almost comically small. She targets a colleague and delivers a baseline, low-stakes greeting. Just, "Good morning, how are you?"
Which is the perfect testing ground. It's a scripted social ritual. The expected response is known. But for someone with Maya's level of paralysis, actually initiating that ritual is a monumental leap.
The text is brutally honest about the immediate result, too. It doesn't say the conversation was life-changing. It describes it as feeling just okay.
Just okay.
Right. I think we need to read between the lines there.
Right.
When you are forcing yourself out of severe social anxiety, those early interactions are often clumsy. Maybe her voice was a little too quiet. Maybe she accidentally stepped on the end of her colleague's sentence. Maybe the silence that followed felt like it lasted an eternity.
It was awkward.
It was incredibly awkward.
And we possess a deep societal allergy to awkwardness.
Oh, big time.
We interpret an awkward moment in a conversation as a flashing red light, indicating that we have critically failed, that we are inherently unlikable, and that we should retreat immediately.
But Maya's journey proves that awkwardness is not a failure state. Awkwardness is simply the toll you have to pay on the road to confidence.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it. It is the unavoidable friction of learning a new skill in real time. If you watch someone learn to ice skate, their first time on the rink is a series of flailing, uncoordinated, highly awkward movements.
Lots of falling down.
Tons of falling down. But we don't judge them for that. We understand it's part of the physical learning curve. Social dynamics require the exact same grace. The trembling voice, the awkward pause. That is just the social equivalent of a wobbly ice skater.
And the differentiator for Maya is that she doesn't let the wobble stop her. She survives that initial clumsy good morning, realizes the world didn't actually end, and decides to keep paying the toll.
She keeps going.
Slowly, she scales up the difficulty. She moves from basic greetings to asking simple, open-ended questions like, how was your weekend? Or what project are you tackling today?
Notice how directly she is applying Daniel's initial advice here.
Oh.
She is utilizing simple questions as a tool to direct her mental energy outward. While the colleague is answering, Maya isn't using her newly freed up cognitive RAM to plan her next brilliant remark. She's using it to actively listen, to maintain relaxed eye contact, to smile.
She is weaponizing her outward focus to completely silence her internal critic. And this creates a fascinating snowball effect. Because she is actually listening, the other person feels valued. Because the other person feels valued, they respond with warmth.
And that warmth serves as positive reinforcement for Maya.
Exactly, lowering her anxiety further for the next interaction. It's a self-sustaining loop of small wins that builds over weeks.
Which culminates in a moment that, from the outside, looks entirely unremarkable, but internally represents a complete psychological victory.
Yes, the climax of the source material. It happens in a cafe, which is a notoriously unpredictable environment. Maya is standing in line, waiting for her coffee. There is no script, no familiar colleague, just a complete stranger standing next to her.
A real test.
Without overthinking it, without the system crashing, she simply turns to the person and asks, is this your first time here?
A spontaneous, unscripted initiation of dialogue.
And the stranger smiles, answers, and a natural conversation unfolds. No panic, no background apps draining her battery, just two human beings sharing a moment of genuine presence.
This raises an important question that challenges how we fundamentally misunderstand personal growth. We have a pervasive tendency to view confidence as a mandatory prerequisite for action.
We really do.
We tell ourselves, once I finally feel confident, then I will start speaking up in meetings, or once my anxiety goes away, then I will introduce myself to the CEO.
But waiting for the feeling of confidence to magically arrive before you take the action is a trap that keeps people stuck for decades.
It completely reverses the actual psychology of behavioral change. The ultimate lesson from Maya's trajectory, the entire point of the text, is that confidence did not appear suddenly. It wasn't a prerequisite, it was the result.
The result of action.
Yes. Confidence grew incrementally, forged in the fires of those small, incredibly awkward early conversations. Confidence is the trailing indicator of a long series of persistent actions.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The blueprint we extracted from Maya's story is a highly practical, deeply versatile toolkit. Whether your hurdle is mastering the nuances of a new language, stepping into a networking event where you don't know a single soul, or preparing to deliver a pitch in a boardroom that normally makes you freeze.
The mechanics of overcoming that paralysis are exactly the same.
They are. You start by acknowledging that your panic is rooted in self-focus. You build your own flight simulator, doing the private out-loud practice to organize your thoughts and drastically lower your cognitive load.
You do the reps.
You do the reps. You step into the real world and willingly pay the toll of awkwardness with incredibly small, low-stakes interactions. And above all, you relentlessly redirect your focus away from your own internal performance and toward the human being standing in front of you.
It's so well said.
We've traced a remarkable evolution today. We watched someone move from a state of suffocating, self-centered anxiety to a state of liberated, genuine connection. We broke down the mechanics of clearing out your mental RAM so you actually have the bandwidth to listen, and we proved that embracing the messy, unglamorous reality of awkwardness is the only actual pathway to building unshakable confidence.
It is a powerful reminder that in every human interaction, the desire for connection will always supersede the demand for perfection.
100%.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought that builds on Daniel's philosophy of being present. We established that conversational anxiety is fueled by treating an interaction like a high-stakes performance for a highly critical audience.
Right.
But what if we completely inverted that dynamic? How entirely would your anxiety evaporate if, instead of viewing a conversation as a performance you were being judged on, you started viewing it purely as a gift of your attention that you were offering to someone else? How might that simple shift in perspective change the very next hello you say today?
That is a brilliant provocation to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep rewiring those circuits, keep leaning into the awkwardness. And remember that the person across from you doesn't want perfect words, they just want you. We'll catch you next time. Have you ever looked around at your life and realized you are just sort of checking boxes?
Oh, absolutely. The whole wash, rinse, repeat cycle.
Right. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, make dinner, and then, you just scroll on your phone till you go to sleep.
And it looks perfectly fine on paper.
Yeah, exactly. You're responsible, you're doing what you're supposed to do, but something inside just feels completely blank.
It's like this creeping sense of stagnation.
Exactly. It's that quiet realization that the life you're living and the life you actually wanted have somehow drifted just miles apart.
Yeah, it's the trap of the perfectly acceptable life, which is, honestly, it's incredibly insidious.
Why do you say insidious?
Because it's not a crisis. I mean, you aren't in danger, but that lack of urgency is exactly why it is so incredibly difficult to escape.
Right. There's no fire forcing you to run out of the building.
Exactly. So you just sit there feeling vaguely unfulfilled.
Well, today we're going to figure out how to walk out of that building. Welcome to today's deep dive.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too. We are looking at a narrative from the Easy English podcast. It's titled, Are You Living Your Dreams?
And it follows a guy named Aiden who finds himself in, well, exactly this perfectly acceptable, totally blank trap.
Right. And our mission today is to break down the exact low-stakes mechanics of how we get stuck in these comfortable routines.
And more importantly, how to actually escape them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. What do you do when your life looks perfectly fine on the outside, but feels entirely empty on the inside?
It's a huge question. And usually the advice out there is terrifying.
Oh, it really is. It's always like, take massive risks, quit your job.
Right. Make these huge cinematic leaps of faith. But Aiden's story gives us a completely different, highly counterintuitive framework.
So if you're listening to this right now and you know exactly what that emptiness feels like, this deep dive is your roadmap out.
And we promise it does not require you to blow up your life.
No terrifying leaps required. But to really grasp the solution, we have to start by looking closely at the trap itself.
Yeah, Aiden's life, which is, well, it's the modern default.
It really is. I mean, he has a stable job. He wakes up at the exact same time every single day.
Goes to work, finishes his tasks, comes home, eats dinner.
And then the classic move. He lies on the couch and scrolls on his phone before falling asleep.
It is the absolute definition of normal. He is safe, fed, and employed.
I kept thinking of this analogy while looking at his routine. It's like his life has gone into screensaver mode.
Oh, screensaver mode. I like that.
You know what I mean? Like the computer is technically on, the power is flowing, the hardware is totally safe and stable.
But nothing new is actually being processed.
Right. No new programs are running. No new data is coming in.
Yeah.
It's just that same little DVD logo bouncing from corner to corner.
Over and over again, yeah.
Safe, but completely dormant.
What's fascinating here is the profound psychological dissonance that screensaver mode creates.
How so?
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, Aiden has actually won the game. Our ancient brains are hardwired to seek out stability.
Because predictability meant survival back in the day.
Exactly. Right? Routine meant you weren't going to get eaten by a predator.
Okay, but his brain clearly isn't happy about it. I mean, he's surviving, but he's not really living.
Right.
So why does the very thing our brain supposedly wants, safety and routine, make us feel so miserable?
Because human beings also have a fundamental competing neurological need for novelty. We need problem solving and a sense of forward momentum. We need neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to form new connections.
So when you have complete external stability, but absolutely zero internal growth,
your baseline dopamine levels just drop. You don't feel peaceful. You feel this pervasive emptiness.
And the scary part is often you don't even realize why you feel so empty until something like violently shocks the system.
And for Aiden, that shock comes from the exact thing he uses to zone out every night.
His phone.
Yeah, he's doing his usual evening doom scroll, and suddenly he's seeing people out there actually doing things.
Right, they're traveling to new places. They're starting businesses.
Creating art, learning new skills.
And it's like someone jiggled a mouse and deactivated his screensaver. The contrast is just blinding.
It completely shatters the illusion that his routine is all there is.
Because seeing others actively engage with the world forces him to confront his own lack of engagement.
Exactly. It takes that dull background ache of dissatisfaction and brings it right to the front of his conscious awareness.
And it hits him so hard that he pauses right there on the couch. And he asks himself a really heavy question.
He asks, am I living my dreams or just living my routine?
That is a staggering question to ask yourself on a random Tuesday night.
It really is. Because the moment you acknowledge you're just living a routine, you have to confront your own history.
Right. You have to ask the terrifying follow-up question, like, where did my dreams actually go?
When did I stop trying?
So once he realizes he's trapped in this loop, he's left with the new problem.
He can't solve this from inside his own echo chamber.
No, he needs an external perspective to figure out where he went wrong.
Yeah.
So he reaches out to an old mentor of his.
Mr. Harris.
Yeah, my name Mr. Harris. They meet up in a quiet cafe, and Aiden just lays it all out.
He confesses, I feel stuck. My life is okay, but it doesn't feel meaningful.
And Mr. Harris's response is, well, it's the pivot point of Aiden's entire worldview.
It really changes everything.
Mr. Harris listens to him, smiles, and says, many people don't fail their dreams. They simply forget them.
They don't fail, they forget.
That completely changes the paradigm, doesn't it?
It does, because it shifts the blame and removes the shame. Aiden hasn't suffered some catastrophic defeat.
Right. He didn't try to climb the mountain and fall off.
No, he just got comfortable at base camp and eventually forgot the mountain was even there.
Wow. Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Mr. Harris is diagnosing a very specific, very common psychological trap.
Which is?
The perfect time fallacy.
Okay, explain how that fallacy works in practice. Like, how do we just forget what we want?
Well, Mr. Harris explains to Aiden that people wait for the perfect time. They wait until they feel completely 100% ready to start their dream.
Oh, right. Like, I'll write that book when work slows down.
Exactly. Or I'll start that business when I have an extra $10,000 saved.
But that moment rarely, if ever, arrives.
Because life is inherently messy. There is never a Tuesday morning where all the traffic lights are green, your bank account is overflowing, and you have zero obligations.
Right. And by constantly waiting for the perfect time, you end up waiting forever.
And in that perpetual waiting, the dream just slowly fades into the background noise of life. You just forget it.
Okay, I hear that, and it sounds incredibly profound in a cafe. But I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's be realistic for a second. Rent is due. Mortgages exist.
True.
If your dream is to be an entrepreneur or to travel the world, isn't it completely irresponsible not to wait for the right time?
That's the exact fear people have, yeah.
Doesn't jumping into a dream require massive planning and a safety net? Like, if you just drop everything because you suddenly remembered a forgotten dream, you could ruin your perfectly stable life.
You are voicing the exact fear that keeps millions of people frozen in screensaver mode.
I mean, it's a valid fear, right?
It is, but we create a false dichotomy in our heads. We tell ourselves, it's either my safe, boring routine, or I have to quit my job, sell all my possessions, and risk absolute financial ruin.
Right. We think change has to be catastrophic to be real.
Exactly. But Mr. Harris explicitly shuts that dichotomy down.
So how does he resolve that for Aiden? Because Aiden still has to go to work tomorrow.
He tells Aiden, living your dreams doesn't always mean changing everything overnight. Sometimes it means taking small steps.
Oh, small steps. Okay.
It's not about jumping off a cliff without a parachute. It's about bridging the gap between your current reality and your forgotten dreams with tiny, manageable actions.
Actions that carry zero existential risk. Okay, well, that is a huge relief. You don't have to blow up your life to change it.
Not at all.
And this realization arms Aiden with exactly what he needs. He goes home, and instead of feeling crushed by this massive pressure to suddenly live his dream in some grand way,
he just looks for a low-stakes way to implement his first small step.
right, he finds a way to replace a passive habit with an active one.
Yes. Instead of handing in his 2 weeks' notice or booking a one-way ticket to Europe, he just tackles that 8:00 p.m. Tuesday night time slot.
He goes home, and instead of opening his social media apps to doom scroll, he simply opens an old book he had bought a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember the title.
Yeah, it was Short Stories in English for Beginners. Teach yourself.
The choice of learning a language is quite telling here, actually.
It really is, because whatever Aiden's overarching forgotten dream was, maybe it was traveling, living abroad, or just connecting with new cultures.
Learning a language is the ultimate example of a goal that can only be achieved through small steps.
Right. You cannot cram a language. You can't learn it overnight no matter how hard you try.
It completely forces you into the micro-action framework.
But notice the immediate psychological shift that happens to him. At first, it's just a simple 10-minute habit.
Yeah.
But almost immediately, he feels different. He feels calm, focused, present.
It's amazing how fast that happens.
But why does it happen so fast? I mean, he barely knows any new vocabulary yet. How does 10 minutes of reading a beginner's book cure the existential dread?
Because he has broken the cycle of passive consumption.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of this.
Think about scrolling on a phone. It's passive. It happens to you. You are a receptacle for algorithms.
And it drains your baseline dopamine without giving you any sense of accomplishment.
Exactly. But reading a book, especially one aimed at learning a new skill, is active engagement. It requires your agency.
You have to decode the words, comprehend the grammar, hold the narrative in your mind.
Yes. And just the act of asserting control over that 30 minutes before bed signals to his brain that he is no longer a passenger in his own routine.
He is rebuilding his self-efficacy.
So basically, active consumption is you exerting your will on the world, which proves to your brain that you actually have power over your environment.
Precisely. And once you prove that to your brain, your identity begins to shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Once you assert that agency, momentum starts to build almost automatically.
It's like a snowball effect.
Yeah. A few days go by, and Aiden moves on to a second book. It's called Learn English Through Stories. 16 stories to improve your English grammar and English vocabulary.
And what's brilliant is that the content of these specific stories focuses on life, choices, and personal growth.
Right. They directly mirror Aiden's own situation.
Which inspires him to think differently about his own capacity to change.
It's the perfect feedback loop. The medium is reinforcing the message. And this brings up a crucial neurological concept.
Oh, what's that?
The reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Okay, what exactly is the RAS?
Think of it like a nightclub bouncer for your brain. You have millions of pieces of sensory data hitting you every single second.
Sights, sounds, ideas, opportunities.
Exactly. If your brain processed all of it, you'd go crazy. So the bouncer stands at the door of your conscious mind and only lets in what it thinks is important to you.
Based on what you focus on.
Right. When Aiden was doom scrolling, his bouncer was looking for envy and distraction.
But the moment Aiden starts actively reading about growth, choices, and language.
He's basically handing the bouncer a brand new VIP list.
Oh, I love that analogy. So suddenly, opportunities or ideas that were always there in the background start getting let into his conscious mind.
Exactly. When you start taking action toward a goal, your brain starts filtering the world differently to help you achieve it.
And you can see that happening because his momentum just accelerates. Soon, he adds another layer.
He starts listening to audio, right?
Yeah, specifically a program called Effortless English. Learn to speak English like a native.
And he listens to it while he's walking or just relaxing.
Habit stacking. Reading before bed, listening while walking.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. Think about the actual mechanics of change happening in this story.
Yeah, look at what Aiden is doing. Is he sweating? Is he stressed? Is he risking his financial stability?
No, he is utilizing pockets of dead time.
Progress comes from small, consistent actions, not from big, sudden, risky decisions.
It is so incredibly subtle. If you looked at Aiden's life on paper during this specific week, it wouldn't look like he was living the dream.
He still has the same job. He still wakes up at the same time. He still eats the same dinner.
But internally, the foundation of his entire world is shifting.
Because he has fundamentally altered the trajectory of his routine.
A routine itself isn't inherently bad, you know? Humans need structure.
Right, a stagnant routine is bad.
Exactly. By injecting a tiny amount of purposeful, active learning into his daily life, he has turned his routine from a cage into an engine.
Which brings us to the compound effect of all this consistency. Because we're not talking about a weekend motivation bender here.
No, Aiden doesn't just do this for 3 days and declare himself cured.
Weeks pass, then months. He just keeps at it.
He spends time learning. He starts writing down a few ideas.
He even starts exploring other hobbies he once loved but had, completely forgotten about.
And crucially, the narrative doesn't pretend this is a magical, perpetually uplifting experience.
Oh, no. It specifically highlights that some days the habit feels easy and natural, but other days it feels incredibly difficult.
You're tired. You had a bad day at work. You just want to zone out.
The friction is totally real. Let's not pretend it isn't. But because the steps are so small, Just reading a chapter, listening to a 10-minute audio track.
The friction isn't enough to completely derail him.
Right. It's much harder to talk yourself out of 10 minutes of reading than it is to talk yourself out of, like, a 2-hour gym session.
Exactly. So he pushes through those difficult days. And slowly, almost invisibly, the transformation happens.
He feels more alive. He feels more motivated.
He feels fundamentally reconnected to himself.
He has systematically dismantled that feeling of emptiness by filling the void with intentional compound action.
There is this beautiful, quiet realization that happens, and I want to sort of set the scene for you.
Okay, set the scene.
It's evening. Aiden is sitting quietly in his living room. There's no phone in his hand. There are no distractions.
It's just him and his thoughts.
And in that silence, this profound realization hits him. He is no longer waiting. He is moving forward.
The perfect time never arrived. He just started anyway, right in the middle of his imperfect life.
It reminds me of dropping dye into a massive glass of water.
Oh, yeah. Like when you put that first tiny drop of blue dye into a clear glass, it doesn't seem to do much.
It just creates a little swirl that dissipates. The water still looks clear.
You might even think the drop was totally ineffective. That's day one of Aiden reading his book.
But if you consistently add one drop every single day over weeks and months,
You are fundamentally altering the chemical makeup of what's in that glass.
you don't notice the change day by day, but eventually you look at the glass and the water is completely vibrantly blue.
The whole environment has transformed.
That is exactly how microactions work on human psychology. One drop of active learning doesn't seem to touch the massive volume of a monotonous routine.
But consistency changes the chemistry of your day. The new, vibrant water is his feeling of being alive again.
And when Aiden finally meets his mentor, Mr. Harris, for the next time, he doesn't need to give him a grand speech.
He just smiles at him and says, I understand now.
He doesn't need to explain the mechanics. He has arrived in that new reality.
And Mr. Harris simply nods and says, good, because there's nothing left to teach him.
Aiden has internalized the truth that action precedes motivation, not the other way around.
So what does this all mean for you?
We've unpacked Aiden's journey. We've looked at the trap of the screensaver mode.
The fallacy of waiting for the perfect time and the incredible chemical power of consistent microactions.
But what is the ultimate takeaway?
You do not need to change your life overnight. You do not need a flawless, foolproof plan.
You do not need to blow up your safety net. You only need to start.
Small steps, every day.
The barrier to entry for living your dreams is literally just whatever small, active engagement you can take in the next 10 minutes.
Reading one page of a book.
Writing one sentence of a business plan.
Listening to an educational audio track while you commute.
And Aiden's story leaves us with a final, lingering question to ask ourselves. Are you living your dreams or waiting for the right time? Because the truth is simple. One day or day one, you decide.
One day or day one. I love the framing of that so much.
It puts the agency entirely back in your hands, exactly where it belongs.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
The entire premise here is about taking small steps to reclaim our forgotten dreams, okay, to remember what we wanted and finally walk toward it. But think about the dye in the water again. When you add those drops, you aren't just changing the color, you're changing the substance itself.
Yeah, that's true.
So what if the simple act of consistently taking those small steps, of pushing through the friction of the hard days, of shifting your identity from passive consumer to active creator?
What if that process changes you?
Yes. What if it changes you so fundamentally that the dream you eventually achieve is an entirely new, beautiful destination you hadn't even thought to dream of yet?
That is the real magic of stepping out of screensaver mode. You aren't just moving toward a dusty, forgotten goal.
You are becoming a completely new version of yourself, someone capable of imagining far bigger goals.
Exactly. You jiggle the mouse, the screen wakes up, and suddenly you have a blank canvas again.
Start drawing, just one tiny line at a time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Imagine you've spent like 2 solid years perfectly mastering how to drive a car. You know the mechanics, you understand the rules of the road, and you feel incredibly confident behind the wheel.
Right.
But there is a catch. You've only ever driven in a massive, completely empty parking lot.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. So the weather in that parking lot
Yeah,
is, like, always clear.
exactly.
There are no pedestrians.
Yeah.
No unpredictable drivers to bump into. And your instructor is just sitting right next to you, giving you these calm, deliberate instructions with plenty of warning before every single turn.
Yeah, it feels incredibly safe. You understand every variable in that totally controlled environment.
Sure.
But then you take your hard-earned driving skills out into the real world. You try to merge into real traffic.
Which is terrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it feels like you've been teleported out of that safe parking lot and dropped directly onto a chaotic, high-speed, 8-lane highway. Cars are cutting you off, horns are blaring, and the rules you learned seem to have completely vanished. That jarring, terrifying transition is exactly what it feels like when you try to take a new language out of the classroom and you try to actually listen to native speakers in the real world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the transition from the textbook to the street it's where so many learners simply freeze up.
Right.
And they just question whether they have actually learned anything at all over those past 2 years.
And we are tackling that exact feeling of overwhelm today, so welcome to our deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we are deconstructing this massive brick wall that almost everyone hits when learning a new language. Understanding native speakers when they seem to be talking at a million miles an hour.
Yeah, it's universal.
It really is. So our mission today is to figure out why native speech sounds so utterly impossible to decode. And more importantly, we want to uncover a specific 4-step protocol to actually train your ear.
Right, getting past the frustration.
Exactly. We are drawing our insights today from a brilliant story-based lesson titled Mastering the Rhythm of Fast English Speakers, and that's from the Easy English podcast.
Yeah, and the approach in this lesson is incredibly practical because it bypasses dry grammar lectures and just uses a narrative to get straight to the core of how our brains process audio.
I love that about it.
We basically follow a case study of a learner named Sarah. And Sarah is the perfect avatar for the classic language learner's dilemma.
She really represents the frustration we have all felt at some point. I mean, she's put in the work. She possesses a massive vocabulary.
Huge vocabulary.
She understands all these complex grammar structures. If she sits down for a deliberate, slow conversation with a language tutor, she follows along beautifully.
Right, the empty parking lot.
Exactly. But the moment she tries to watch a movie without subtitles, or she overhears a group of native speakers chatting at a cafe, her entire processing system just shuts down.
Yeah, the words just blur into this muddy, continuous stream of sound.
And she has that deeply human reaction where she starts to question her own intelligence. She's asking herself, why can't I understand fast English?
Which is so heartbreaking, but so common.
It is. But I need to pause here and challenge this core premise for a second. Is it really just a matter of speed?
What do you mean?
Well, because if I take a professionally recorded audiobook where the narrator is enunciating perfectly, and I go into the app and crank the speed up to 2x, it is incredibly fast.
Right. Yeah.
But my brain can still parse the words. I can still understand the story perfectly fine. So if sheer speed isn't actually the barrier, what is happening to the words in real life that makes them so incomprehensible?
That is the perfect question. And that distinction between speed and clarity is the exact revelation that changes everything for a learner.
Okay.
So the mentor character in our story, James, he introduces a concept that completely flips the script. He points out that fast English is not just fast.
Okay, so what is it then?
Well, Sarah didn't learn writing English, right?
Mm-hmm.
She learned clear English. When you speed up an audiobook, you are simply compressing clear English.
Right.
Every single consonant and vowel is still perfectly articulated by the narrator, just in quicker succession.
Oh, I see. So the boundaries between the words are still there.
They are. But in a native conversational environment, people do not speak clear English. They don't just say the same perfectly articulated words faster. They structurally change the words.
Structurally change them.
Yeah. They actively connect words together, they reduce sounds, and they frequently skip whole syllables or chunks of words entirely for the sake of efficiency.
Okay, let's look at the classic example provided in the lesson because this really helped me. A textbook teaches you the formal, perfectly segmented sentence, like, what are you going to do?
Right.
6 distinct words. What are you going to do?
But a native speaker in a casual setting almost never articulates those 6 distinct words.
Yeah.
The sentence morphs entirely. It just compresses into what you're going to do.
What you going to do? It shrinks from 6 sharp words into 3 blended, messy sounds. Thinking about that transformation gives me a very specific visual. It's the exact difference between print handwriting and cursive handwriting.
Oh, I like that. Let's explore that visual because it maps perfectly onto what the ear is actually experiencing.
Right. So in print handwriting, every single letter stands alone. There are clear, defined spaces between the letters and obvious boundaries between the words.
Yep.
A printed T and a printed H have these distinct geometric shapes. But in cursive, the letters flow together without any bricks. The physical shapes of the letters actually change to accommodate the connection to the next letter.
Right, they bend and loop.
And when someone is writing in cursive very quickly, some of the letters are barely formed at all. They just become a little bump in the ink.
Yeah, a total scribble.
So native speakers are essentially speaking in audio cursive.
Audio cursive, I love that. Applying the concept of cursive to audio explains the exact root of Sarah's frustration. Her brain is desperately searching the audio stream for printed text.
It wants those clear boundaries.
Exactly. It expects those clear, distinct boundaries between words. But that audio input simply does not exist in a natural conversation. You cannot read cursive if your brain is only trained to recognize print.
Right. You'll just see a page full of meaningless squiggles.
Yeah, and your brain just drops the information because it doesn't recognize the shapes.
It's just noise.
Yes. Neuroscientists actually refer to this as prediction error.
Prediction error.
Yeah, your brain anticipates a specific sound, the clear printed textbook word. But when the incoming audio doesn't match that prediction, the brain fails to map it to the vocabulary you already know.
Even if you know the word perfectly.
Exactly. So the learner has to fundamentally shift their focus. They must stop trying to identify individual textbook words and start focusing on the actual sounds.
The rhythm, the connected flow, the audio cursive.
Yes.
Okay, acknowledging that native speakers use audio cursive is a great paradigm shift. But how do you actually force an adult brain to read those audio squiggles?
Well, that's where James comes in.
Right. The lesson outlines a very specific ear training protocol to bridge this gap between clear English and real spoken English.
And it boils down to working with short audio clips, repeating them constantly, slowing the audio down to catch the connections, and most importantly, practicing a technique called shadowing.
Shadowing. Let's define that.
So shadowing is defined as listening to a piece of audio and immediately repeating it out loud. You are trying to perfectly mimic the speaker's rhythm, their intonation, and all those messy connections.
Okay.
Focusing on sounds, not just words, is the golden rule for this step.
I have to push back on this shadowing requirement, though.
Cool.
Yeah, it just sounds exhausting. Why is immediate out loud repetition necessary? If the goal is simply to train my ear to hear better, why can't I just put on an English podcast while I'm, I don't know, doing the dishes or folding laundry?
The laundry method.
Right. Doesn't bathing my brain in the language through passive listening accomplish the same thing over time?
Well, passive exposure is great for getting a general feel for the melody of a language, sure. But it falls completely short when you are trying to crack the code of audio cursive.
Really?
Yeah. When you passively listen to a podcast while folding laundry, the messy, connected sounds just wash right over you. Your brain doesn't have a compelling, urgent reason to decode the reductions and the skipped syllables.
It treats it as background noise.
Exactly.
Because there's no consequence to not understanding it.
And no active engagement. Active repetition like shadowing out loud forces a completely different cognitive and physical process.
Physical process.
Yeah, to physically reproduce the reduced connected sound of what you're going to do, your brain have to actively map that exact messy rhythm. You are literally engaging your motor cortex.
Wow.
You have to move your mouth, your tongue, and your vocal cords in unfamiliar ways.
Wait, hold on. Engaging the motor cortex sounds intensely biological. What is actually happening in my brain when I sit in my living room and just repeat what you're going to do out loud?
Well, your brain is building muscle memory. When you force your physical articulators, your tongue, your lips, your jaw, to mimic the blurry connections of native speech, your motor cortex sends feedback directly to your auditory cortex.
Seriously?
Yes, you are physically teaching your brain how that specific sound is produced. This physical mapping dramatically reinforces your auditory cortex's ability to recognize that same sound pattern the next time it hears it.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. You aren't just sitting in the audience letting the music play. You are forcing yourself to pick up an instrument and play along with the band.
You build the physical muscle memory of the sound, which in turn trains the ear to catch it. That is fascinating.
It really is.
But taking this intense shadowing protocol and applying it to real life sounds daunting. How does a learner actually execute this without getting completely overwhelmed and just, quitting by day 3?
Yeah, burnout is real.
Yeah.
But we can look at Sarah's exact 3-phase progression to see how to remove the training wheels gradually. This isn't about jumping straight onto the highway. It is about a controlled escalation of difficulty.
Let's break down phase 1 then. Sarah starts her practice using a resource called Short Stories in English for Beginners, specifically the Touch Yourself version.
Hmm.
And her method here is to listen to the audio while reading the text at the exact same time. Then she pauses and repeats each sentence slowly and carefully.
Right.
But I see a potential flaw here. Isn't reading while listening basically cheating?
Cheating. How so?
Well, if the entire goal of this exercise is ear training, having the text right in front of your eyes seems to defeat the purpose. Your brain is going to take the path of least resistance and just rely on reading the print rather than decoding the audio cursive.
I hear you. Labeling it as cheating is actually a very common misconception among learners.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What is actually happening in phase one is calibration. Think of the visual text as a necessary anchor.
An anchor, okay.
See, Sarah's brain currently only knows the clear textbook words. When she hears the messy audio cursive, her brain experiences that prediction error we discussed, and it panics.
Right, the squiggles.
But by looking at the perfectly spelled printed text, while simultaneously hearing the messy spoken sound, she is building a neurological bridge.
Oh, so she is actively teaching her brain, hey, this messy sound hitting my eardrum is actually this specific, clearly printed word I already know.
Exactly. She is pairing the known visual with the unknown audio. The visual cortex is literally helping the auditory cortex decode the signal.
That's brilliant.
She is calibrating her ear to the reality of the spoken word in a safe environment. And once that initial neurological link is stabilized, she's ready to remove the visual crutch and introduce some friction.
Which brings us to phase 2.
Phase 2.
So in phase 2, Sarah moves to a new resource. Learn English through stories. 16 stories to improve your English grammar and English vocabulary.
Long title, but great resource.
Very long title. But here, she takes the training wheels off entirely. She listens without reading.
And removing the visual anchor is where the real test begins. It is highly frustrating at first.
Which makes total sense, you've taken away the safety net. When Sarah hits play on that audio without the text, she feels exactly what you feel when you accidentally turn off the subtitles on Netflix.
Sheer panic.
Sheer panic. The words start blurring together again. But instead of quitting, she pushes through the friction. She uses the shadowing protocol.
Right.
She listens to the exact same story over and over again, repeating the sounds out loud until she starts to map them without the visual aid.
It takes discipline. But once she conquers that frustration, she graduates to phase 3.
And phase 3 incorporates a resource called Effortless English. Learn to speak English like a native.
Yeah. And the goal here shifts from intensive decoding to sheer repetition. She is learning to sort of surrender to the rhythm and the natural sound of the language.
She listens repeatedly, shadows naturally, and allows the rhythm of the language to take over. This is the stage where the patterns start to lock in, right? She realizes the words are naturally connected, the harsher consonant sounds are softer. The lesson describes this breakthrough beautifully, actually. It says that English begins to feel more like music.
And reaching that musical stage is the ultimate payoff. But we do need to be very clear about the reality of the timeline here.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is not a weekend life hack.
No, it is a workout routine for your brain. Just like going to the gym, your muscles are going to ache before they grow.
Perfect analogy.
The timeline is slow, and some days are incredibly demoralizing. But Sarah doesn't stop. She listens again and again. And we see that after 2 weeks of this daily shadowing protocol, a tangible shift occurs.
2 weeks is the magic number.
She watches a short video in English, and she actually understands more. She doesn't catch every single word, but the wall of sound is starting to break apart into recognizable chunks.
Yeah, 2 weeks is generally the threshold where the brain starts to trust the new audio mapping it has been forced to do.
Okay.
The motor cortex and auditory cortex have communicated enough times to establish new neural pathways.
And then, jumping forward to the 1-month mark, Sarah notices a profound transformation. Fast English doesn't feel like an impossible assault on her senses anymore.
Her ears are trained.
Her ears are trained. Her brain is automatically recognizing those messy, connected sounds without requiring her to consciously translate them or visualize the printed text.
It's automatic. And the most important byproduct of this whole process is the confidence she gains.
Right.
There is this great moment where someone speaks to her quickly in a real, unscripted conversation. And she doesn't freeze.
She doesn't panic.
She just listens, and she understands. She smiles because she finally realizes the ultimate truth of her entire struggle.
Which is?
Her previous inability to understand native speakers was never a reflection of her intelligence. It was only ever a matter of training her ear to hear the cursive.
That is such a relieving realization. And, the implications of that realization extend far beyond just learning English.
Oh, definitely.
I want you, listening to this deep dive right now, to think about the hurdles you are currently facing in your own life.
Yeah, think about it.
Maybe you are learning a new language, or maybe you are trying to process incredibly dense new skills at your job, or trying to wrap your head around a complex new software system.
Anything new and overwhelming.
Exactly. When you hit that wall, when everything feels too fast, too chaotic, and completely incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Do you get frustrated because you assume you lack the underlying intelligence to grasp it? Or is it simply because your processing center hasn't mapped the rhythm of this new environment yet?
It's almost always the latter. But assuming a lack of intelligence is the easiest, most defeating conclusion to jump to.
It's a trap.
It is. But it is almost always a mapping issue. The brain just needs the right kind of exposure and active repetition to build the bridge.
Yeah.
The final piece of advice the mentor, James, leaves us with is profound in its simplicity.
Yeah.
You don't need to be faster to understand fast speech. You just need to listen more and listen better.
Listen better. So what does listening better actually look like in practice? Let's do a quick recap of the mechanics we've unpacked today. The foundational takeaway is that fast native speech isn't just a sped up version of textbook language. It is fundamentally changed. It is connected, reduced, and blended into audio cursive.
And you cannot conquer audio cursive by simply memorizing more vocabulary words from a printed page. You conquer it by fundamentally changing how you practice.
Right. You have to actively calibrate your brain. You implement the 4-step protocol. You start with short clips so you don't overload your cognitive capacity.
It's a demanded tool.
You slow those clips down to hear the hidden connections. You use text as a visual anchor in the beginning to build the neurological bridge between the known word and the messy sound.
That crucial calibration phase.
And above all else, you practice shadowing. You physically repeat the sounds out loud, engaging your motor cortex to force your brain to map the messy reality of the rhythm.
Yeah.
You accept the intense frustration of the first few weeks, knowing that the music of the language is waiting for you on the other side of that friction.
It requires a massive shift in mindset from passively acquiring information to actively training a physical and neurological reflex.
It's active work. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a slightly provocative thought experiment to mull over on your own.
Oh, love these.
We've spent our time today analyzing how native speakers naturally erode, blend, and shorten their words for the sake of speaking efficiently.
Right.
Taking a clear sentence like, what are you going to do? And eroding it down to, what you gonna do? It makes me wonder about the long-term trajectory of spoken language itself.
Well, language is a living thing, right? It is in a state of constant evolution.
Exactly. So think about this. What will spoken English actually sound like in 200 years? If this constant erosion and blending for the sake of speed and rhythm continues generation after generation, will today's fast, messy audio cursive eventually be written down and formalized?
Like actually put in the dictionaries.
Yeah. Well, what you're going to do literally become the formal, clear, textbook English of tomorrow.
That is a wild thought.
And if today's messy shortcuts become tomorrow's formal rules, what on earth will native speakers 2 centuries from now sound like when they speak quickly?
I can't even imagine.
Will future language learners have to deal with an entirely new, even more compressed set of confusing audio shortcuts that we can't even conceive of today?
The irony is that the clearer we try to write things down and formalize them in textbooks, the more we inherently want to blur them together when we actually speak. It's just human nature.
It really is. So the next time you find yourself suddenly forced to merge from that safe, perfectly controlled empty parking lot onto the chaotic, high-speed highway of native speech,
just take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. Don't panic. You aren't a bad driver, and you certainly aren't lacking intelligence. You just need to turn on the radio, actively engage with the messy rhythm of the traffic, and let your ear catch the music.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep practicing, and we will catch you next time.
Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I was thinking about this feeling we've all had. You're sitting in a meeting, or maybe you're in a classroom.
Right, the pressure is on. I'm glad to be here to talk about this, by the way.
Same here. So someone brings up this really complex problem. The whole room goes quiet. People are, scratching their heads.
Staring at their notes, trying to avoid eye contact.
Exactly. And almost instantly, the solution just clicks in your mind. Like you can see the whole picture perfectly.
Ah, the elusive light bulb moment. You are sitting on the exact piece of the puzzle that the entire room is desperately searching for.
But then you don't actually say it. You just sit there.
Yeah, you freeze.
Totally. You start running the sentence through this mental gauntlet, like rehearsing it over and over, worrying that you might stumble over a preposition or that your vocabulary isn't quite sophisticated enough for the audience.
And while you're quietly agonizing over your syntax, the conversation just moves on.
It does. The moment just evaporates.
It's awful. It leaves you feeling entirely hollowed out. You end up trapped in this self-made mental prison, prioritizing the shiny packaging of your thought over the actual tangible gift you have to offer the room. I mean, it's a tragedy of wasted potential.
That exact tragedy is our mission today. We are talking directly to you, the listener, because in this deep dive, we are dismantling the specific anxiety that stops you from speaking up and sharing your expertise.
We really want to get to the root of it.
Yeah, and we are pulling our insights today from a really fascinating narrative source titled Clarity Over Complexity: Mastering the Art of English Opinions.
And what makes this material so compelling is that it completely bypasses the usual dry textbook grammar lessons.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. Instead, it explores this deeply relatable human bottleneck through the story of a professional named Leo.
Yeah, Leo. And he is just the perfect avatar for this problem. He represents a phenomenon that plagues so many incredibly smart, capable people in the modern workforce.
Okay. Let's unpack this. Let's look at Leo's day-to-day reality, because our source introduces him as someone dealing with a massive paradox between comprehension and expression.
It's a huge gap. The text makes it very clear that Leo has absolutely top-tier passive understanding.
Oh, yeah. He reads dense industry articles, he watches complex technical videos, he follows these rapid-fire, nuanced conversations without breaking a sweat.
His brain is basically a sponge.
What's fascinating here is the biological and psychological divide between recognition and retrieval.
Right. Those are two very different processes.
Completely different. When Leo is reading or listening, he's relying on recognition. The external world is providing the stimulus, and his brain simply has to decode it.
Which is pretty easy for him.
Yeah, that's a relatively low-energy cognitive process.
Yeah.
But speaking, that requires retrieval. You have to build the neural pathway from scratch in real time.
Pulling vocabulary, structuring grammar, and trying to project confidence all at the exact same time.
And that retrieval process completely short-circuits for him. Despite his vast accumulated knowledge, when it's time to generate an opinion out loud, Leo just freezes.
He hits a wall. And the source explicitly names the two internal questions that act as his mental roadblocks. It's, what if I say it wrong? And what if people don't understand me?
He's viewing communication not as a bridge to connect with his colleagues, but as this high-stakes exam that he's perpetually terrified of failing.
Like every meeting is a pop quiz.
Exactly. The desire to contribute a great idea is entirely hijacked by the fear of being judged for the delivery.
You know, it reminds me of someone buying a phenomenal $1 million state-of-the-art sports car.
Ooh, I like this analogy.
Right. You've got all this engineering marvel, a massive V8 engine, incredible handling, but you just leave it parked in the garage under a tarp. Permanently.
Safe and sound, but totally useless.
Totally useless. You are so utterly terrified of taking it out on the road and getting a tiny scratch on the paint from like a piece of stray gravel that you never actually drive it.
And the vehicle serves absolutely no purpose if it never leaves the garage. All of Leo's brilliant strategic insights are locked away in the dark.
Completely useless to his team.
All just to protect his ego from a minor grammatical dent.
I really want you to pause and reflect on that for a second. Think about your own professional life. How many times have you kept a truly innovative idea parked in the garage because you didn't trust your ability to polish the chrome before showing it off?
Because you didn't trust the raw value of the idea itself.
Exactly. And, you know, the tragic part of keeping the car in the garage is that eventually you have to watch someone else drive past in the exact same model.
Which is precisely the breaking point the source describes for Leo.
It's such a gut-wrenching scene in the text. Leo is sitting in a strategy meeting. He has the perfect solution bubbling up in his mind.
But that fear of imperfect delivery kicks in.
Yep, and he swallows the idea. He stays totally silent. And then, 10 minutes later in that exact same meeting, a colleague chimes in and pitches a nearly identical concept.
And the reaction from the room is what really makes it sting. The team just embraces it.
They love it. They praise the colleague for the brilliant insight.
It's the ultimate double-edged sword. On one hand, it validates Leo's intellect, right? His ideas are undeniably good.
The machine works. The engine is great.
Right. But on the other hand, it highlights the devastating cost of his silence. He is actively losing credit, influence, and the opportunity to shape his company's direction.
And that visceral frustration, that's the catalyst. That's the moment Leo finally draws a line in the sand and says, I need to change this.
He realizes his career survival depends on breaking this paralysis, which leads him to a mentor in the narrative named Clara.
Clara is great.
She really is. She acts as the philosophical pivot point for the entire source material.
So Leo sits down with Clara and basically pours his heart out. He confesses the whole paradox to her. He says, I understand everything, I have the vocabulary in my head, but I simply cannot express my opinion clearly when the spotlight is on me.
And Clara's response fundamentally shatters the illusion Leo has been operating under.
She just turns it all upside down?
She does. She tells him that his struggle is incredibly common and then delivers this central thesis. She says, expressing your opinion is not about perfect English. It's about being clear and simple.
Clear and simple.
She is redefining the entire objective of speaking. For Leo, the goal was always perfection. Flawless grammar, sophisticated vocabulary, sounding like a literary genius.
Sounding smart, basically.
Right. And Clara yanks the steering wheel and says, no, the goal is clarity. She shifts the burden away from the performance of language and places it entirely on the successful transmission of the idea.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here, because I know the exact question you might be thinking as you listen to this.
Lay it on me.
Is simple actually going to cut it in the real world?
Yeah.
Like if I'm standing in a boardroom presenting to a skeptical VP, or I'm trying to win over a high-profile client, doesn't keeping my language deliberately simple run the risk of making me sound, I don't know, junior?
Yeah.
Or uneducated?
It's a fair question. And it's the most common trap ambitious professionals fall into. We constantly equate complexity with intelligence.
Right. Big words equal big brains.
But the source material aggressively challenges that assumption. Simple does not mean childish, and it certainly doesn't mean ignorant. Simple means accessible.
Accessible. I like that.
Think about the most profound communicators in history. They don't hide behind convoluted jargon. Complexity is often just a smokescreen we throw up when we feel insecure, trying to baffle the room into thinking we're smart.
So we use $10 words to build a fortress around our ideas, hoping nobody attacks them.
Precisely. But that fortress actually prevents the idea from reaching anyone. The true barrier Leo is facing isn't a lack of sophisticated vocabulary.
No, he's got the vocabulary.
The barrier is the massive cognitive anxiety produced by trying to manage all those complex words in real time. When you consciously choose to use simple language, you instantly drain the anxiety from the situation.
You stop trying to juggle.
Exactly. And that bandwidth frees up your actual underlying expertise so it can shine through.
Which brings us to the execution phase. Clara doesn't just hand Leo this lovely philosophy and wish him luck.
No, she gives him actual tools.
Right. She equips him with a highly tactical framework to actually pull this off.
She provides the architectural scaffolding for his thoughts.
Yeah, our source outlines these incredibly basic, almost embarrassingly simple expressions Clara forces him to memorize. Phrases like, I think that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I believe, from my point of view.
Very foundational stuff.
And for engaging in debate, she gives him the straightforward structures.
I agree because, and I disagree because.
They seem almost too basic, but mathematically they are brilliant. They serve as verbal on-ramps.
Verbal on-ramps, I love that image.
Well, when the brain is frozen in a state of anxiety,
Yeah.
trying to invent a clever opening sentence is like trying to scale a brick wall. These phrases give you a ladder.
You don't have to overthink the start. You don't have to think about it at all. You just hit play on, in my opinion, and by the time those 3 words are out of your mouth, your brain has had a critical second to cue up the actual substance of your thought.
Leo actually has that exact reaction in the narrative. He writes the phrases down and thinks, this feels way too simple to actually work.
It's deceptive.
It is. But then Clara drops what I consider the absolute golden rule of this entire framework. She looks at him and says, don't try to say everything. Say one idea. Give one reason. That's enough.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that constraint, one idea, one reason, is arguably the most powerful communication tool anyone could master, native speaker or not.
Let's break down the mechanics of why that works so well. Because my instinct, when I finally get the floor in a meeting, is to dump every single piece of supporting evidence I have so nobody can question me.
Oh, absolutely. And that instinct is exactly what ruins the delivery. It's a trauma response to the silence.
Wow, trauma response.
Yeah. When we feel nervous or insecure about being understood, we overcompensate. We ramble. We throw 5 different ideas and 7 tangential reasons at the audience, hoping desperately that at least one of them lands.
It's like trying to juggle flaming swords while riding a unicycle. You're managing so many variables that you're practically guaranteed to drop everything.
And from the audience's perspective, it is exhausting to watch. They can't process 5 ideas at once.
Yeah, they just tune out.
By forcing yourself into the one idea, one reason straitjacket, you are executing supreme editorial control before you even open your mouth. You prevent the ramble. You hand the audience a single, easily digestible concept.
You're just handing them a single tennis ball instead of making them watch you juggle swords.
Yeah.
They can actually catch it.
Exactly. It radically lowers the cognitive load for you as the speaker because you only have to construct one logical path, and it guarantees that your core point actually anchors itself in the listener's memory.
Knowing this theory is fantastic. But reading a rule about simplicity doesn't instantly erase years of ingrained anxiety.
No, of course not.
Leo has to actively rewire his brain's default settings. He has to build new neural pathways that default to clarity instead of complexity. And the source details the deliberate, fascinating practice routine he uses to get there.
The transition from theory to muscle memory, this is where the real work happens.
The text highlights 3 very specific resources Leo leverages. First, he picks up a book called Short Stories in English for Beginners.
Okay, beginner stories.
Right. He reads a simple story, and then he verbally practices his output using Clara's framework. He says out loud, I think the story is interesting because it shows real life.
Simple, clean, effective.
Then he grabs another resource. It's called Learn English Through Stories. 16 stories to improve your English grammar and vocabulary. He reads, he processes, and he outputs. In my opinion, the character made a good decision because he was honest.
Again, one idea, one reason.
Exactly. Finally, he listens to an audio program called Effortless English while he's out for walks. And the core message of that audio program constantly reinforces Clara's philosophy, repeating, don't think too much, speak naturally, use simple English.
It's like a mantra for him.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Consider the massive disconnect in Leo's environment. He is a high-level professional preparing for cutthroat, high-stakes corporate strategy meetings. And he is preparing for them by reading beginner-level short stories about fictional characters making basic decisions.
On paper, it looks completely absurd.
It sounds crazy.
You would assume a professional should be practicing by summarizing the Wall Street Journal or dense financial forecasts.
Right, something at his level.
But from a neurological standpoint, Leo's strategy is absolutely brilliant.
It's almost like he's taking the cognitive load of decoding complex business strategy off his plate entirely, so 100% of his processing power can go into the actual mechanics of sentence assembly. Is that the mechanism here?
That is exactly the mechanism. If Leo tried to practice this new one idea, one reason framework while reading a dense corporate white paper, his brain would be fighting a war on 2 fronts.
Ah, that makes sense.
Half his bandwidth is trying to understand the complex business concepts, and the other half is desperately trying to format the simple output. The anxiety would creep right back in.
Because the stakes are too high.
Precisely. By using beginner stories, the comprehension phase becomes entirely effortless. The stakes are 0.
There's no pressure.
None. This completely bypasses the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, which usually hijacks his language processing when he feels threatened.
Oh, wow. So he's tricking his brain.
He is isolating the specific skill he needs to build. He is just greasing the groove of stating a simple opinion and attaching one clear reason to it. He's building the muscle memory in a safe environment.
So he's training his nervous system to realize that formulating an opinion doesn't have to trigger a fight or flight response. And if he does that enough times with short stories, the structure becomes automatic.
The goal is to make the scaffolding so deeply ingrained that when he finally steps back into the high-stress environment, his brain doesn't have to consciously scramble for how to construct the sentence.
It's just there.
The formatting is already baked in, freeing him to just focus on the business strategy.
Which sets the stage for the ultimate real-world test. All the practice in the world with beginner stories doesn't mean anything until Leo takes that sports car out of the garage and actually drives it into the office.
The moment of truth. He has to return to the exact boardroom environment where he previously froze up and watched his ideas get stolen.
The narrative recounts this Beautiful, tense breakthrough moment. Leo is sitting in a discussion. The old familiar pressure is there,
You can feel the tension.
but this time he uses the framework. He slows down, he opens his mouth and says, I think this idea is useful because it saves time.
Boom. One idea, one reason.
Yes. And the source specifically notes a crucial detail here. His sentence is not grammatically flawless. It's not perfect, but it is crystal clear. The room stops, they listen, and they instantly understand his point.
That moment of validation is the linchpin of his entire transformation. He spoke up, he didn't use a 5-syllable MBA buzzword, he made a slight grammatical error.
And the sky didn't fall.
Exactly. Nobody laughed. Nobody thought he was unintelligent.
The exact opposite, actually. The momentum immediately begins to build. The text shows us that as the days pass, Leo leans into this new reality. He realizes the water is fine.
He's swimming.
During a subsequent team discussion, he delivers a much more assertive statement. He calmly tells the room, in my opinion, we should try a different approach because this one is too slow.
That's a strong statement.
His voice doesn't shake. His message cuts through the noise. And his team actively agrees with his direction.
He has successfully crossed the chasm from being a passive observer who merely catalogs information to an active contributor who shapes reality.
And it triggers this profound internal epiphany for Leo. The source highlights his realization that he never actually needed to acquire better English.
He already had it.
He didn't need to memorize a dictionary. He just needed the courage to deploy the English he already possessed. He finally understands that making a minor mistake isn't a catastrophic failure. It's simply a natural, unavoidable byproduct of the communication process.
This raises an important question. How do you, the listener, currently define the concept of fluency?
That's a great question.
Because I think society has conditioned us to equate fluency with an absolute absence of errors. We picture someone speaking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, using incredibly complex vocabulary, never pausing, never making a mistake.
The illusion of the polished orator.
But the core takeaway from this entire narrative aggressively dismantles that definition. Fluency is not about complexity, is not about speed.
Then what is it?
Fluency is entirely about clarity. It is simply the ability to transfer an idea from the dark confines of your brain into someone else's brain with as little friction as possible. If you can achieve that frictionless transfer using a simple 5-word sentence, you are entirely fluent.
So what does this all mean? Let's distill this entire journey down into the actionable blueprint that Leo leaves behind for us. It is refreshingly straightforward.
Very straightforward.
Start simple. When you have a thought, use a basic framing phrase. Say exactly what you think. Give one single solitary reason for why you think it, and then stop talking.
The stopping talking part is key.
It really is. And you need to practice this intentional simplicity every single day, starting in low-stakes situations until it becomes your default setting.
It's a behavioral system explicitly designed to bypass our deepest anxieties and prioritize genuine human connection over performative intelligence.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to recap the ultimate message here, speaking directly to you. Your voice carries weight.
It absolutely does.
The insights you generate while sitting quietly in those strategy meetings or those classroom debates, they have immense real-world value. Please, do not let the pursuit of flawless grammar or the pressure to sound aggressively sophisticated permanently silence your good ideas.
And I want to leave you with a completely different angle to mull over, building on what Leo discovered.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Well, think about it. If Leo's colleagues didn't care at all about his grammar and only cared about the value of his ideas, what does that say about how much grace we should give ourselves when communicating?
That's powerful.
We are currently entering an era where artificial intelligence can instantly generate flawlessly grammatical, perfectly sophisticated, hyper-complex walls of text in milliseconds. Computers have mastered the art of sounding smart and complicated.
They really have.
So, if the machines have a monopoly on complex jargon, perhaps raw, unpolished, simple human clarity is about to become the most incredibly valuable, irreplaceable currency we possess. Is our obsession with sounding smart actually the biggest barrier to genuine human connection and progress? If someone can look you in the eye and give you one clear idea and one honest reason, that suddenly feels a lot more powerful than a 10-page, heavily formatted report.
That is a fascinating perspective to walk away with. Simplicity as the ultimate human advantage. Because at the end of the day, it is time to take that high-end sports car out of the garage. Stop worrying about getting a tiny scratch on the paint take it out, put it in gear, and let the world see what it was built to do. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Step out of your comfort zone, keep it simple, keep speaking, and we will catch you next time. So usually a dashboard is like your best friend. You're driving down the highway, you glance down.
Right. You just check your speed or maybe the engine temperature.
Exactly. It's just objective, neutral data helping you operate the machine. But the second that fuel gauge starts hovering right near the letter E, looking at the exact same dashboard, changes completely.
Oh, completely. It's not about gathering data anymore.
No, it becomes this massive source of dread. You almost want to put a piece of physical tape over the warning light.
It's a very human avoidance tactic, honestly. I mean, we convince ourselves that if we just don't look at the flashing light, maybe the tank isn't actually empty.
Right, like reality is just suspended if you look out the window.
Exactly. We operate under this bizarre assumption that looking away somehow fixes the problem.
Well, today we're looking at why we do that exact same thing with our bank accounts. And, more importantly, how to rip that tape off without having a panic attack.
Yeah, it's a huge issue for so many people.
It really is. So we're unpacking a remarkably relatable story about financial literacy today. But don't worry, we are not talking about complex hedge funds or, restructuring your entire life overnight.
No, not at all.
We are exploring how to achieve real financial empowerment through tiny, manageable behaviors.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So it's that heavy anxiety of working 40+ hours a week and feeling like you have absolutely nothing to show for it. But what is so compelling about Nora's situation is what's actually draining her accounts.
Right, because when we picture financial ruin, we usually imagine someone buying a sports car they can't afford.
Or financing a massive mansion or something.
Yeah.
We picture these spectacular cinematic failures.
But Nora's reality is much more insidious. I mean, there's no sports car. She isn't making massive, reckless purchases.
So where's it going?
Her money is disappearing through small, entirely invisible leaks. We're talking about the daily coffee, the casual online shopping, the Tuesday night food delivery.
Yeah, the everyday conveniences.
Exactly. Conveniences that our modern economy has made completely frictionless.
Frictionless is the perfect word for it, honestly. I mean, you're sitting on your couch, you see an ad on social media, you double-click the side button of your phone.
It scans your face.
Yeah, right. It scans your face. And a package arrives at your door 12 hours later. Your brain barely even registers the fact that you just parted with your hard-earned money.
And that lack of friction is entirely by design. Because these purchases are so small individually, $20 here, $15 there, Nora doesn't register them as financial threats.
They just fly under the radar.
Yeah. It's only the quiet, unrelenting accumulation of those minor expenses that completely drains her account by the 30th of the month.
Which brings us to how Nora, and frankly most of us, handle that end-of-the-month shock. When the math doesn't add up, Nora's reaction is to just stop checking her bank account.
She actively avoids it.
Yeah, because looking at it makes her anxious. It's the fuel gauge all over again. She's afraid she's running low, so she stares out the window instead.
But ignoring the gauge just guarantees you're going to end up stranded on the side of the highway.
Exactly. So why is it that our instinct is to look away from the very thing we desperately need to manage?
Well, behavioral economists actually call this the ostrich effect.
The ostrich effect, like burying your head in the sand.
Precisely. When our brain perceives information as psychologically painful, its natural defense mechanism is to protect us from that pain by avoiding the information entirely.
Wow.
But the tragic irony of the ostrich effect in personal finance is that ignorance doesn't actually bring bliss. It brings a persistent, suffocating, low-level dread.
Because your imagination just fills in the blanks.
Right. You don't know exactly what the number in your checking account is, so your anxious brain assumes the absolute worst.
And then that assumption makes you feel even more stress.
Which makes you want to avoid looking at the account even more. It's a self-perpetuating cycle of financial paralysis. You are constantly bracing for an impact you refuse to look at.
Man, it is an exhausting way to live. And Nora finally hits her breaking point. She sits down with her friend Hassan and just unloads all of this frustration.
Yeah, she tells him how hard she works and how she never, ever feels in control of her money.
And Hassan delivers the core thesis of our entire discussion today. He tells her it's not about earning more. It's about building small habits.
And that statement is a massive paradigm shift.
How so?
Well, Almost all of the financial advice we absorb culturally tells us that the solution to money stress is an income problem. We're told to get a raise, start a side hustle, monetize our
Right,
hobbies.
work an extra shift, hustle culture.
Exactly. But Hassan completely bypasses the income side of the equation. He points out that if you have a behavioral leak, pouring more water into the bucket doesn't fix the bucket.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Earning more money feels like an external rescue, but building small daily habits is an internal rewiring.
So Hassan gives Nora a roadmap. And what's brilliant about this approach is that the first phase has absolutely nothing to do with saving money. He starts with immediate emotional triage.
Which is so smart.
He tells her to track her expenses. He wants her to write down every single thing she spends money on, no matter how small. And Nora has the exact same reaction any of us would have. She's appalled. She asks everything.
Because on the surface, telling an overwhelmed adult to write down their coffee purchases sounds almost insultingly tedious.
Yeah, it sounds like homework.
But Hassan's reasoning is foundational. Awareness is the first step. He's not giving her a math assignment. He's giving her a behavioral intervention.
Interesting.
The physical act of taking a notebook and writing down the cost of a sandwich forces the brain to acknowledge the reality it's been trying so desperately to ignore.
And the result of that exercise is fascinating. Nora does it. She tracks her coffee, her lunch, her transport, and she quickly realizes she's spending significantly more than she ever thought.
But the twist is her emotional reaction.
Right. Instead of feeling a crushing sense of guilt about spending more, she actually just feels aware. And that awareness gives her a strange sense of control.
The terrifying monster in the closet turned out to just be a pile of laundry when she turned the light on.
That is exactly it. And that transition from avoidance to awareness sets up the next crucial behavior. Hassan tells her to review her money weekly.
But the genius isn't in the frequency, it's in the framing. He tells her to check her finances. Not with fear, but with curiosity.
I love that. That might be the most powerful framing I've ever heard for personal finance.
It really changes everything.
It's like you're becoming a scientist of your own life. You're putting your spending habits under a microscope to observe them objectively, rather than dragging yourself into a courtroom to be cross-examined and judged.
That's a great way to put it.
You're just looking at the data and saying, isn't it interesting that I ordered delivery 4 times this week? Let's jot that down. There's no moral failing, there's just observation.
Because curiosity neutralizes the moral judgment we attach to money. We tend to view financial mistakes as character flaws.
Oh, totally. We think buying that expensive latte makes us irresponsible or foolish.
Right. But when you approach your bank account as a curious observer, you remove the shame. And without the shame, you can actually start making rational decisions.
And once Nora is looking at the numbers without judging herself, she's ready to put up some basic guardrails.
She's ready to build a structure that keeps her safe without feeling like she put a padlock on her own wallet.
Exactly. So Hassan suggests setting a simple budget. And the key concept here is simple. He actively discourages making it complicated. He just wants her to know her basic limit.
And the resulting budget Nora creates is described perfectly in the source. It says, not perfect, just clear.
Just clear. I love that.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, perfectionism is the absolute graveyard of financial progress. People get a sudden burst of motivation and they try to build these ultra-detailed, color-coded spreadsheets.
I've been there.
Right. They try to account for every single penny across 20 different micro-categories.
And it lasts about 48 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it requires too much cognitive load to maintain.
Yeah, the moment they forget to log a $2 purchase, the spreadsheet is ruined, so they abandon the entire system and go right back to avoiding their accounts.
A simple, clear, slightly imperfect budget that you actually check once a week is infinitely more powerful than a mathematically perfect system that you ignore.
It's about creating boundaries that exist in the real world, not in a fantasy version of yourself.
Right.
Now, alongside that simple budget, Hassan gives her a piece of advice that made me pause. He tells her to learn basic financial terms. Words like saving, investing, budgeting.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit. Is learning vocabulary really a daily habit? It sounds like studying for a test. I mean, writing down your expenses is an action, but memorizing definitions feels totally disconnected from managing the money in your pocket.
I completely understand the skepticism, but think about the environment Nora is operating in. The financial world is packed with incredibly dense jargon, yield curves, amortization, compound interest, index
It
funds.
sounds like a foreign language.
And this language is often intentionally designed to sound intimidating. It's meant to make the average person feel like they need to hire an expensive professional just to understand their own money. So Hassan's justification is that understanding these words gives you power.
Ah, so it's the habit of demystification.
Yes. When you make it a reflex to look up a financial term you don't understand, instead of just skipping over it and feeling stupid, you're breaking down the gatekeeping of the financial industry.
You stop being intimidated by the language.
Exactly. You're building the habit of financial literacy itself, which claims your seat at the table.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You're refusing to let the vocabulary scare you out of the room.
Right.
So let's look at where Nora is now. She has awareness. She's tracking her spending with a scientist's curiosity. She has a simple, imperfect boundary for her spending, and she's slowly decoding the intimidating language of money.
Which is a huge transformation already.
It is. But how does this abstract framework actually change what she does on a random Tuesday when she's tired after work?
This brings us to the micro actions that reshape daily life. Hassan teaches her the power of the pause. Before she makes any impulse purchase, she has to insert a tiny delay and ask herself one single question. Do I really need this?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because a 5-second pause sounds trivial.
Right.
But from a behavioral standpoint, it's a massive intervention.
It really is.
We talked earlier about how the systems draining her account are designed to be frictionless. They want you operating on pure autopilot.
And by forcing herself to stop and ask that question, she is throwing a wrench into the gears of that seamless checkout process. She's manually inserting the friction back in.
Neurologically, what's happening there?
Well, impulse buying is driven by the emotional reward-seeking part of the brain. When you see something you want, you get a spike of anticipation. The 5-second pause is a tactical delay.
It slows you down.
Yes, it gives your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, forward-thinking part of your brain, just enough time to boot up and assess the situation. You are breaking the spell of the impulse.
And once she starts breaking that spell, she actually has a little bit of money left over at the end of the week, which leads to the next step, saving a little every month and setting small financial goals.
Hassan advises her to just save something, no matter how small, and to plan for a specific goal.
But wait, mathematically speaking, if Nora is only curbing a few impulses and saving, say, $5 or $10, isn't that basically useless?
How do you mean?
Well, she's trying to build real financial stability. Saving the equivalent of one skipped coffee feels like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. Why even bother going through the effort?
This raises an important question, and it's a trap that keeps millions of people broke. People assume that if they can't save $500 a month, they shouldn't bother saving $5.
Right, feels pointless.
But right now, Hassan isn't trying to fix the math. He's trying to fix the brain. His advice is that it's not about how much you save, it's about the consistency of the act.
So the volume doesn't matter at first.
Not at all. The act of transferring $5 into a savings account is about building the muscle of saving. More importantly, it creates a radical shift in your identity.
Identity shift.
Yeah. When Nora actually manages to save that tiny amount, the realization hits her. The source says it's not much, but it feels important. She is proving to herself through undeniable physical evidence that she is a person who saves money.
The psychological win precedes the financial win.
Always. You have to believe you are capable of holding on to your money before you can actually begin to build wealth. That $5 isn't a financial safety net, it's a psychological anchor. It proves that she has agency.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. You're changing your identity from someone who bleeds money to someone who accumulates it, even if it's just pennies at first.
Exactly.
And that identity shift is what sustains the final and arguably most difficult piece of the puzzle, the magic ingredient that holds all of these tiny behaviors together.
Habit number 8.
Right. Hassan simply reminds her, money habits take time to grow.
We live in a culture of extreme impatience, you know. We want the movie montage where the protagonist goes from struggling to wealthy in 30 seconds with an upbeat soundtrack.
Yeah, we want the quick fix.
But real behavioral change is painfully slow. Yeah. You can't go to the gym for one afternoon and expect to be an Olympic athlete, and you can't track your expenses for a week and expect a lifetime of financial anxiety to just evaporate.
It requires the slow, unglamorous passage of time.
Yeah.
And the story of Nora really honors that reality. The narrative doesn't wrap up overnight. Weeks pass. Then months pass.
She just keeps at it.
Yeah, Nora continues doing these tiny, almost boring things. She tracks the coffee. She pauses for 5 seconds before clicking buy. She checks her imperfect budget with curiosity instead of fear.
And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the heavy dread begins to lift. The stress doesn't vanish in a flash of lightning. It just slowly fades out.
She begins to feel calmer. The persistent anxiety of the unknown is gone because she finally knows exactly what is happening under the hood.
Exactly. She feels more in control, more confident. And then one day, she looks at her savings account. And for the first time in a very long time, she smiles. She feels genuine pride in her progress. She realizes that Hassan was absolutely right. She didn't need a massive promotion or a winning lottery ticket. She just needed small habits.
It's a quiet victory. But those quiet behavioral victories are the most resilient. She didn't get rescued by an external windfall. She simply climbed into the driver's seat and took control of the steering wheel.
It's so empowering.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? When we step back and look at Nora's entire journey, from avoidance and dread to awareness and pride, the ultimate takeaway is crystal clear.
True financial literacy is not about being rich.
No, it's not about securing a massive salary or memorizing Wall Street trading algorithms. It is entirely about understanding, tracking, and controlling the money you already have.
Those tiny behaviors, writing down a single purchase, delaying a checkout by 5 seconds, looking at your bank app without judging yourself, those are the levers that truly change your financial trajectory.
It shifts your locus of control. Instead of feeling victimized by the broader economy or your specific paycheck, you reclaim power over your own daily choices.
And to bring this directly back to your life, we want to ask you the ultimate question that this entire roadmap builds toward.
Ask yourself, do I control my money? Wait, let me rephrase that without the pause.
Sure.
Ask yourself, do I control my money or does my money control me? Because your honest answer to that question can change the entire course of your life.
And as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've seen how shifting from an attitude of fear to an attitude of curiosity completely rewired Nora's stressful relationship with her finances.
Yeah.
So consider this. What other anxiety-inducing areas of your life might benefit from that exact same shift?
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about your physical health or a difficult career trajectory, or even how you manage your daily time. What might be completely transformed if, instead of hiding from the reality of those situations out of shame, you just started tracking them with a simple notebook and a curious, non-judgmental mind?
It makes you wonder how many other warning lights on our life's dashboard we've intentionally covered up with tape,
Right.
just waiting for the day we finally find the courage to peel it off and look at the data.
Absolutely.
It's not a broken engine, it's just a gauge. And you have the power to refill the tank. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will catch you next time.